Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. Tougher tiers are to be introduced in more parts of England as the Prime Minister urges restraint over Christmas.
This is not the moment to let the virus rip for the sake of Christmas parties. It is the season to be jolly, but it is also the season to be jolly careful.
Donald Trump accepts that a formal transition can begin for President-elect Joe Biden to take office.
To the moon and back. A mission lifts off to bring home lunar rock for the first time in more than 40 years.
Good morning. A shorter quarantine, if you can afford it. From mid-December, self-isolation time when returning from abroad will be cut, but you'll have to take a private test and you may struggle to find insurance.
Good morning. Finally, they'll be let back in. Fans will be allowed in some areas to watch sport in England next week. Gyms and leisure centres will also reopen.
Good morning. We've got more rain to come today across the north of the country. Some of that will be heavy, but for most of us it is going to be a fairly cloudy day with a little bit of sunshine and still quite mild. I'll have all the details in 10 minutes.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, November the 24th. Our top story. The Prime Minister has warned more areas of England will be subject to tighter Tier 3 coronavirus restrictions when the national lockdown comes to an end next week.
Boris Johnson said all shops, gyms, swimming pools and hairdressers will be able to open across the country, but rules for hospitality, sporting events and, socialising will differ. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has more.
The three-tier system of regional restrictions are set to be reintroduced in England on December the 2nd. The good news is shops, gyms, swimming pools and hair salons will all reopen. But some rules will be tougher than before in Tier 3, with pubs and restaurants closed except for takeaways and deliveries. In Tier 2, pubs can only open if they serve substantial meals. And the really bad news?
I should warn you now that many more places will be in higher tiers than, alas, was previously the case.
So it won't be all over by Christmas. But the still self-isolating Prime Minister is hopeful he can reach agreement very soon with the devolved administrations across the UK to ease up a little over the festive season. But don't get the party hats out just yet.
This is not the moment to let the virus rip for the sake of Christmas parties. It is the season to be jolly, but it is also the season to be jolly careful, especially with elderly relatives.
And the medical advice, rules are for Christmas too.
If people do all those things very seriously, we will have much less impact from Christmas, whilst people still being able to enjoy it, than if people choose to actually take a very much less public-spirited approach to it and go wild over that period.
So, Christmas might not be quite so festive this year, but with vaccines and rapid testing, normal life may well begin to be resurrected by Easter. The Prime Minister said he could see an escape route from the pandemic, but it feels like there's still a long road ahead. Ian Watson, BBC News.
People arriving in England from abroad will soon be able to reduce their quarantine period by more than half if they pay for a COVID test after 5 days, the government has announced. The rules will come into force from the 15th of December, and the tests from private firms will cost between £65 and £120. The travel industry welcomed the policy but described it as long overdue.
Donald Trump has accepted that a formal transition of power can begin for President-elect Joe Biden to take office.
In a tweet, he said federal agencies should do what needs to be done for the handover to begin. Let's get the latest now from our North America correspondent, Peter Bowes. Morning to you, Peter. So is this Donald Trump finally accepting that Joe Biden won?
Good morning to you. No, it isn't. In fact, the president followed up with another tweet later in the day. Initially, he acknowledged and essentially gave his blessing for this transition process to start, but later said that it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to give up his various legal cases and his fight against the election result. He said he would never concede to fake ballots. So the president really singing the same tune that we've heard for the last, well, it's 3 weeks to the day, in fact, since the election, complaining about fraudulent ballots, fraudulent votes, and that doesn't seem to be changing. But it's very significant for Joe Biden because he does now have the framework. He has the offices, he has a few $1 million to spend, and he has access to top secret security briefings and access to government officials that he can now speak to. And crucially, he can talk to the medical experts about coronavirus, what the Trump administration has been doing, the lay of the land, what the situation is likely to be in the middle of January when he takes over, when the vaccine is likely to come online, and be prepared to essentially hit the ground running when he eventually takes charge in the White House.
Peter, thank you.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.